From Learfield, this is the Chirpcast, your source for everything Ball State athletics.
We have a special edition of Chirpcast here this week. We're with Interim Athletic Director Ken Bothof. Ken, appreciate you joining the show.
Thanks, Mick. It's good to be here.
How's the first week or so been?
You know, it's been just exactly 1 week. Today is actually, today is actually day 6 in terms of business days anyway. So really starting to get a good feel of how special Ball State is. And I say that just from a leadership standpoint of President Jeff Mearns and the great job that Beth Getz did in terms of the culture within the department and the willingness to help and support. And so that's made it an enjoyable first week.
Now, what's the biggest difference from watching Beth the first couple of days you were here to taking over for what she was doing?
She did a great job laying out kind of a really well-done transition memo. Kind of where she was, the department was on certain projects and things that she thought would be beneficial for me, and I would say just did a great job with it. So I've spent a lot of time with that document. I really think it will help me as I make decisions over a short period of time, and not that they're going to be earth-shattering major decisions, right? But I think she did a great job of just laying the framework for where the athletic department was, some things I could focus on in the short term over the next few months. And it was really well done, and it really did give me kind of a blueprint for what I could look at over the next few months.
What are some of those things that you are going to try and tackle in those first couple of months?
Yeah, I've tried to tell people that I've met with, listen, I really, my initial goal is within about 3 weeks to know enough about Ball State, the athletic department, the university, so that if decisions need to be made, I'm making them with a knowledgeable enough base to make good decisions for people, for the athletic department, and the university. So it really is about research, about getting a feel, so that when those decisions need to be made, you're making good decisions, as good a decisions as you can. And I think the other thing, from a university perspective, I think the president really wants to make sure that we continue to move forward in the fundraising area, connecting with donors, staying connected with donors, making sure we're reaching out, that they understand that this isn't just going to be a void over the next few months. We're still moving forward from a university perspective, from an athletic department perspective, that everyone still recognizes what our priorities are from a facility standpoint, fundraising standpoint, and then really managing a little bit the national landscape and the changes going on there with NIL. Obviously with the transformation committee within the NCAA, and then keeping on top of things within the MAC as well.
So for you as an interim, how is NIL, since you bring it up, I definitely want to go down that path.
Mm-hmm.
For an interim athletic director, how is NIL impacting you right now in this moment?
Well, Ball State's working on some NIL opportunities, and so it really is. I look at it in terms of making sure that we as an athletic department, and during certainly my time here, that we're not exposing ourselves to things from an NCAA standpoint. That yes, we need to get into that space, right? But let's make sure that the space we get ourselves into is also a good space to be in from an NCAA standpoint, and from a priority standpoint from a university perspective and an athletic department perspective, so that we aren't forgetting about the other priorities that we have, which is some facility needs, right? The sports performance center that they're working on and fundraising for, that we don't lose sight I know the president, I believe, is working on fundraising and others for a performing fine arts center, as I understand it. And so let's not lose track of all of those, but also recognizing we need to spend some time in the NIL space and making sure that space is good space to be in.
How is that so different for you now as an interim instead of being the full-time athletic director? Now you have to try to manage all of that type of stuff in such a short window. Are the expectations for you to be able to do it like you would be a full-time, or again, are you trying to just balance all of that for now?
Yeah, just trying to balance all of that, really. I want to make sure that when the transition is complete, when a new person is sitting in the AD's chair, that this momentum, the culture, and the things that are in place now will be in place when that person comes here and takes over the athletic department. And that means we're gonna keep moving forward with certain things, and hopefully we're in a better spot 3 months from now with certain things. But really, it is about maintaining that culture and keeping that positive culture that's here within our department.
So, Ken, we've talked a little bit about the X's and O's so far of what you're doing. Wanted to save your background and who you are as a person until later in the show, because you do have an extensive history as an athletic director and as personnel. So, Ken, first and foremost, you've mentioned President Mearns a couple of times. What is the relationship like between you and President Mearns?
Yeah. Well, I was fortunate. I've been an athletic director for just over 20 years. I've spent many more years in college athletics, but was fortunate, several years ago to look at Northern Kentucky University from a leadership perspective, and President Mearns was the athletic director there. I've always looked at, and throughout my career, I've always felt like my talents are kind of along the building and putting things in place so that success will be there and continue. I like putting organizations together and people in the right spots,
For sure.
right? So the opportunity at Northern was a great opportunity to do that, and President Mearns was the president there at the time, and they were transitioning from Division II to Division I. I had never experienced that before. They had just completed their first year, and so I looked at that as a real opportunity to have an impact, to make a difference, and to really, I think, engage student athletes, coaches, and staff and lead them through a building process. And so that was my first interaction with President Mearns. He's a former student athlete. He's competitive. I still remember that interview today about how long will it take us to be successful in Division I, because he wanted to know.
Absolutely,
so,
I'm sure.
I'll never forget it. And so we built, I think anytime you have an opportunity to work with a president who I would say has a real appreciation for the role of athletics on a college campus community, the impact it can have on a university, it's a great environment to be in. And so we had, I certainly had, I think he had, we built a good trusting relationship. I think that more than anything. He knew, because of my experience and the time I had spent in college athletics, but I think more so the character of the person. I was going to be he could trust me. We would have some challenging conversations at times, but we were, I would say, well aligned in from president, board, to athletic department in what we wanted to accomplish there. And so for me to say, would I ever do an interim once I retire? Certainly he is the person that I would do it for. And that's obvious now as I sit here, just because of that trust I think that we have of each other. that I know he wants things done the right way. Certainly Beth was also that way from a leadership standpoint. Let's be honest and open with people and how we manage things.
No question.
And makes it much, much easier.
So when President Mearns picks up the phone and calls you and says, "Hey, this is what I've got for you. I know you're in retirement, but what do you think about this opportunity?" What did you think?
I thought, initially, because he can be very convincing. He's very good at laying out, the scenario, the needs, and making you feel like you want to be a part of it initially. He also knows my wife pretty well. Her and Jennifer, all of us spent some time together, and so he knew a little bit of a button to push with her. She loves sunshine and said, "I think men's basketball might be going to the Bahamas, and some donors are going, so that would be a trip that would be necessary."
Doesn't hurt.
And so that got her on board right away. But it really was. It gave me an opportunity, and I said, let me think about it. But it did give me an opportunity to go back and say, okay, so what do you miss, right? I had only been retired for 2.5 months, so it wasn't a long time. But I did recognize I really miss the fall and the student athletes when they return to campus, the students when they return to campus, and the energy that brings. And after I thought through that and thought, it'd be a good experience, obviously with President Mearns, but also to be back on a college campus for a while. And then to have really, football is new to me, not entirely new. I worked with it early in my career.
Right.
But not over my last 2 positions. So I thought that would be exciting too, to have an opportunity to work with the football program.
So your wife said, "Okay, this is good for me because I can get this and you can get that, and it can be a short-term window, and everything's good. Everything's worked out."
Exactly. Yeah.
But how about Muncie, Indiana? First off, had you ever been to Muncie before?
I had a couple of times. Okay. Once earlier in my career, just kind of passing through. I like to do that if I'm in the area. Was in Indianapolis and said, "I've never been to Muncie. Let's go take a look at Ball State." So did that then. And then came to a football game on the year that President Mearns was hired. And I believe his ceremony for the new presidency here, and he invited us up, and we got to watch a football game as well. And so a good weekend overall from there. So I had been on campus and got to tour it at that time, which much had changed since early in my career.
Oh, yes.
And being here. And
it's happened a lot in the last 4 or 5 years as well. So the boom of this campus has been tremendous.
Just a beautiful campus. Great job, obviously, by all of those involved in laying out campus and the buildings.
We're with Interim Athletic Director Ken Bothof here on Chirpcast. Ken, what is overall, we've talked a little bit about your stops with NKU and President Mearns in the past, but we just want to go step by step through what your careers look like. Where did it start, and how did you get to Green Bay? How did you get to all of these places that you've gone to?
Yeah. Well, I started out as a teacher and coach at the high school level, and then decided to go back to graduate school, and so moved to San Jose, California, and started graduate school there at San Jose State. And great experience, got a graduate assistantship, started working throughout the whole department, ticketing, marketing, compliance, you name it. Spent a couple years doing that. And then it was kind of one of those right place, right time, right? There was a change in a position, was given an opportunity to be hired full-time at San Jose State, and worked in their ticket office and marketing area there. And then maybe typical of a lot of careers in college athletics, but it seemed like about every 5 years it was time to move, to make progress in a progression in your career. So from San Jose State, spent time at Idaho, went to Idaho State and Pocatello, Idaho.
Oh, yeah.
Where I fell in love with fly fishing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Still have a passion for it today. Still go out west every year and spend some time. So love my time in Pocatello as well. It's been very, very rewarding in all of my trips through college athletics. Moved from Idaho State to St. Louis University. My first experience without football at the time, and first private school that I had worked at. Charlie Spoonhour was a basketball coach there at the time. Just a wonderful individual, a great character, great storyteller, and really fell in love, I would say, with a private institution. A really good visual for the first time of what real alignment between a president and an athletic department meant. And really a time in my life where I decided, I like this. This feels good to me. I like this leadership, the number of student athletes, the opportunity to get to know all of the student athletes and really feel like you're making a difference in a little smaller program. So that really defined, I think, for me where I wanted my career to go from there. And so from there, as an associate AD, was hired at UW Green Bay as the director of athletics in 2001. Started in January of 2002 there and needed to build a program. They had really good success early. Dick Bennett was a coach, so through the mid-90s, early and mid-90s, going to NCAA tournaments, upset Michigan State, or did they get beat on the buzzer by Michigan State? I think, but anyway, they won a first-round game, then got beat on a buzzer beater in the second round. So had success early in men's basketball. Long-standing tradition with their women's basketball program, highly successful. While I was there, we went to the Sweet 16. Just a great athletic department, but had to build men's basketball back to where people expected it to be. So had an opportunity there to build a brand new on-campus arena through a successful fundraising activities and called the Cress Event Center, when from there then to Northern Kentucky University. So it really was, I would say, a career full of great places to live. And I think if people do have opportunities to move throughout their career, I also recognize how wonderful it is to stay at a place. I really do. But as you move throughout your career, I always try and take a little bit of something, from that region or area or institution that I think stays with you.
So what'd you take from Green Bay?
For the rest of your career.
You took fly fishing from Idaho.
Yeah,
and more.
I know.
And more from Idaho.
Green Bay's culture revolves a little bit around, cheese curds and fish fries. So Friday night fish fries in Wisconsin and Green Bay especially, that sits right on the bay. Fresh, perch, fresh fish and Friday nights, and then cheese curds on a bed of French fries. I'm telling you, it's
cheese curds on a bed of French
fries. Oh yeah. With it's special.
And then get to Lambeau Field on Sundays, right? that's what
obviously. Yes, yeah.
Goes without saying.
Yeah.
Well, Ken, we're sure happy you're here,
yeah.
even if it's for a couple of months. Thank you for joining Chirpcast, and thanks for being an asset to Ball State Athletics.
Yeah, thanks, Mick. I appreciate it a great deal. It's a special place. It is, and I don't think, when you're close to it, when you're involved in it, you don't always appreciate it. I hope and I see that people really do appreciate it here, though. And I'm looking forward to spending some time here, throughout the football season and part of basketball. I look forward to working with Coach Lewis as a new head coach here in men's basketball, and certainly hope that I can help and support all of our staff and bring these years of experience and still a lot of energy to help and support them throughout their time.
Well, we can't wait to see what that success looks like in the coming months, Ken. Thank you.
Thanks, Mick.
That's
Appreciate
Ken Bothof joining us here on Chirpcast. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube. We're on all platforms. This is the Chirpcast presented by Varsity House and powered by Learfield.
This has been the Chirpcast. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation.